So Nick, one of the videos that you created features a student named Zhacori Bates, who spent roughly 2 years in the Bon Air facility. Before we talk about Zhacori's story, how about we watch the clip that Margaret just mentioned?
Growing up in the neighborhood that I did was very violent. You know, they had a lot of shootings and fights, people dealing drugs. And personally, I think like the average kid, it messes them up mentally because you're not supposed, that's traumatizing. We grew up very fast. So I was doing things that a kid wasn't supposed to do, like stealing money from people just because I think I needed it. I wasn't really like a bad kid, but sometimes I felt like responsibility was calling, so I had to. It was a rough time for me, especially as a 17-year-old. Somebody was like, hey, there's this going on, and in about an hour, we're gonna go do this. And, you know, I was like, oh, I'm going with you. I needed to. You know, I second-guessed it a couple of times, and every bone in my body, every nerve in my body was telling me not to. But I was just like, okay, whatever, I still gotta do what I gotta do. We robbed a drug dealer. I thought it was like a great idea because you're a drug dealer. I know you have money. And like I said, I felt like I needed money. His family was kind of struggling. I felt like sometimes that was my responsibility. Someone died in the mix of it. That's why it was such a big situation for me, because we were close. He just happened to be with me that day when I made the decision, and I guess he wanted to come too. So I was up on there for 2.5 years. They're trying to help. I'm not gonna say they 100% don't help and 100% do help, but they're trying. I mean, how do you help a 16-year-old that all their life, all they know is violence? You can't just swoop in and say, stop doing what you're doing. It's not gonna work. Like, how you gonna tell me that I have to ask you to relocate? How you gonna tell me that I gotta ask you to go to the bathroom? A lot of kids wasn't used to that. They have the ability to help, but maybe they just need to sit down and actually talk to them. When I went in, I was 18, and I came out, I was 20. It wasn't too different when I came home. It was just, you know, new buildings that they tore down, people I haven't seen in a while, you know, kids that I used to babysit, they grew up, so it was kind of like, wow, all this happened in just 2 years, you know, and before that, I was in detention for a few months. And then I was on house arrest. I really didn't see anybody for 3 years. So it was kind of like weird. In just 3 years, a lot has changed. I got used to it very fast. Come home from work, I just sit here and I'm like, oh my God, this is mine. Like, I did it. I celebrated a lot by myself, just walking around dancing, having the TV, what I wanted to watch, the music I wanted to listen to, you know, just getting comfortable. I'm lucky to have a family that I have. Because I know if I lose this house, God forbid that it happen, if I lose this house, I can go to my mom's house, or my aunt's house, or my grandma's house. And a lot of kids didn't have that, and it was shocking. You know, they go home and come back to Bon Air multiple times. And I personally talked to a few that have, and some of them said because they have 3 meals a day, they have clothes on their back, they don't have to worry about, you know, struggling, trying to figure out when the next meal is gonna be, or you know, where they're gonna lay their heads. And it was kind of rough because some people here don't have anyone on the streets, but up there they do, because they have staff, they have people, you got recreation. But a lot of kids who don't have that, they do appreciate that, because not a lot of people care what they do.
So Nick, how did you find Zhacori? What was compelling about her story to you?
I was connected to Zhacori through the Department of Juvenile Justice in Virginia, and I'd spoken to a number of kids through them, both in the facility, outside the facility. Zhacori was, you know, she's a fascinating person and has a really amazing story. She we talked a lot before we decided to do this interview, and she was really open. She was very well spoken on sort of what she saw, what the issues were as she saw them, and yeah, we connected with her, and it made sense to talk to her, and she has a great story.
The clip left off with Zhacori going to welding school. What is she up to now?
She is currently in Richmond, Virginia, writing her entrance exams for the military.
Awesome. She talks about, at the end of the clip, she talked a lot about her support system and how she was really grateful to have, a mother and a grandmother and an aunt who could take her in if her, situation turned sideways. And she mentioned that that wasn't the case for many of the people that were around her in Bonaire. Who else did you meet there, and what were their stories?
Yeah, part of the reason we decided to pursue a story in Virginia is that it's a state that has an incredibly high recidivism rate for kids. It's over 70% within, a 3-year rearrest rate. 70% of kids will be rearrested within 3 years upon release from Bonaire. And so we wanted to sort of unpack that by talking to kids in the facility, out of the facility, kids on parole, kids diverted out of it. And she really, summed it up perfectly there. A lot of the kids in detention don't have support networks, come from traumatic backgrounds. So if you go to a facility, most are going to be released. You're going back to the same situation that you ended up getting you there in the first place.
It seems like Bonaire is quite far away from where the population that is housed there is actually from. Is that what you recognized?
Yeah, that's another thing particular to Virginia, is that Virginia has seen a very rapid decline in their inmate population in secure care facilities like Bonaire. Because of that, all of the facilities in the state closed except for one. So there's only one facility in all of Virginia for kids sentenced to detention. And that facility is about 20 minutes east of Richmond. The majority of kids at Bonaire come from 3 communities. That's Norfolk, Newport News, and Hampton, which are over an hour away.
Wow. And this is one of 3 videos that you're participating in making. Tell me about the subjects of the other videos.
Yeah, this is one of 3 videos, also part of a longer documentary. Of the other 3 videos, we spoke to a young man, Marquez Jackson, who is currently in Bonaire serving a juvenile life sentence. He is from the DC area, so his family's also very far away. He has trouble getting visitation. And then the third is another young man named Adrienne, and he was diverted out of secure care. So he was convicted of a number of charges. Instead of being sent to Bonaire, he went into a diversion program where he's living in an apartment paid for by the Department of Juvenile Justice in Virginia Beach.
And what did you learn between the differences in those 3 experiences? How does the arc of this series help us learn more about juvenile detention in Virginia in general?
I think what we wanted to do with this series is tackle the idea of juvenile justice being this effort at rehabilitation in particular. For juveniles in secure care, the goal is rehabilitation. They're going to be going home. How do they function at home after that? And I think there's recognition within the Department of Juvenile Justice, amongst advocates, amongst almost everyone I spoke to in Virginia, that the system as it is now isn't working as they've designed it. And so there is more of these efforts on diversion programs, basically going to a facility far away, removed from the communities where the kids will be returning to, isn't working. And they're trying to find ways to get facilities closer to the kids or keep the kids out.
And so Bonaire is the last juvenile facility in the state of Virginia, and it's a part of a system that you just said is not working in numerous ways. What is the future of this facility?
They are trying to close it. The director of the Department of Juvenile Justice submitted a proposal to open a facility in the Chesapeake region, which would be an hour's drive from these 3 high communities. It would be 25 minutes away from each of them. unfortunately, it was rejected by the local town council. There was, amongst advocates, there was the feeling that this was still too large. It was a 60-bed facility. Amongst the local community, there was a feeling that it could affect property values. So it was shut down. As I understand it, there's another proposal in the works, also in that region, but as of yet, it's an ongoing effort.
Absolutely. When we talk about reforming parts of the criminal justice system, reducing the juvenile population seems like an aspirational goal. Many people agree that that is an ideal circumstance. Did you see any resistance to that or problems with the way that this is playing out in practice?
I think as the population declines, you're starting to see the problems even more clearly. A decade ago, there was over 1,300 kids in secure care in Virginia. Now there's 208 boys and girls at Bon Air. But the racial disparity amongst those kids is greater. All of the kids I spoke to were African American. Most of the kids I met there were African American. In Virginia, if you are African American, you are 7 times more likely to be arrested than your white counterparts. So while the population is going down, it's exposing other things.
Absolutely. I want to close out by talking about your experience reporting. What kind of stuck with you? What was your first impression of Bon Air as a facility, and how did doing this story in VR affect the way that you approach this storytelling?
I'll start with the Bon Air as a facility. It took me a while to find it. It's kind of tucked away in the woods. When I walked in, at first it seemed like just kind of an old school. You know, there's a school on campus. Then I got into the maximum security side, and it felt like an adult prison, a maximum security adult prison. So it's massive. It's really big. It's split up into the maximum security side, schools. It covers a huge area. Overall, it was just struck me as being very large and kind of complicated. In terms of using the VR, that was a decision we took early on. We were interested in trying out storytelling with this. I think it's something that's particularly suited to these sort of stories. We had some concerns initially about protecting the kids' identity, making them feel a little bit more comfortable, so having that sort of point of view experience allows you to just look through their eyes and thus not having to show their faces. And it also, we wanted to bring people in to give them a better idea of exactly what this felt like, exactly what these kids were going through.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing the other 2 shorts in the feature. Thank you so much.
Thank you.